Have you ever met a complete stranger and yet felt like you've known them forever? Like a subtle vibration in your soul, gentle but undeniable, as if two spirits had just recognized each other in the chaos of life. And sometimes, someone may walk into your life for just a few days, then disappear, but leave behind a mark. Like a question with no answer etched into your heart. There are also those who hurt you the most, and somehow they change you the most, as if they didn't come to love you, but to awaken something in you. I remember a woman named Susan, in her 50s, living in Colorado. One day she sent me a letter. Her handwriting was shaky, and it read, "Dear teacher, I don't understand why I keep meeting people who hurt me. I don't want to hold grudges, but I can't seem to forgive either. I just want to know, why did they come into my life?" And she's not the only one asking that question. In fact, many of us, whether we're 30, 40, or 60, have wondered at some point, why did that person walk into my life? And why did they leave? There's an old Zen story that goes like this. Once, on a mist-covered mountain, there lived an elderly monk and his disciple in a small temple. Every day, the teacher shared his wisdom not through grand speeches, but through simple things, brewing tea, sitting in silence, or quietly observing who entered through the temple gate. One spring morning, as cherry blossoms were falling like soft snow, a young man came to the monk's face, a mix of weariness and determination. "Master," he said, "my whole life I felt pulled into strange relationships. Some people I meet feel like I've known them from a past life. Others hurt me deeply and then vanish. I want to know, are these all just random encounters?" The old monk didn't answer right away. He simply smiled, caught a falling cherry blossom in his palm, and said, "Do you see this petal? It didn't choose to fall here, but the wind brought it right here, right now, into my hand." From that moment, the elder began telling the young man stories of karma, of spiritual connections, of people who come and go, and how every single one of them, whether they stay for a season or a second, leaves behind a lesson in the garden of our heart. In today's video, I want to share with you, through the story of Daniel and Master Lin, some powerful reflections on why people come into our lives, and how every encounter holds a meaning that goes far beyond what we can see. So, take a deep breath, find a quiet place in your heart, and come with me on this journey, as if you're walking through the inner garden of your soul, where each meeting, whether joyful or painful, is a seed of awakening. 1. Having few friends isn't a flaw, it's a conscious choice. There are moments in life when we pause and wonder, why don't I have as many friends as other people? Why do I feel lonely, even when I'm surrounded by people? In a world where success is often measured by the number of followers, likes, and social circles we belong to, not having a ton of friends can feel like a red flag, like maybe something's wrong with us. But when we slow down, really slow down, we start to see the truth. Having few friends doesn't mean something's missing. It means we're becoming more intentional. A real friend's someone we can show up to as our true self. No masks, no performances, no fear of judgment is more valuable than 100 surface-level connections where we just play a part. I once met a woman from New Jersey who works as a caregiver for the elderly. After a Dharma talk, she said to me, "I don't have close friends, just 2 coworkers I chat with now and then. But strangely, I don't feel like I'm missing out. I feel full." When I asked why, she smiled and said, "Because I've learned to befriend myself." And when that happened, the few people who entered my life actually saw me, heard me. They were few, but they were real. And maybe that's what the Buddha meant when he said, "A true friend is the one who stays when everyone else has gone." Not everyone who walks with us during the good times will sit beside us when the silence comes. In a small mountain temple in Japan, far from the bustling world, There lived an old Zen teacher named Lin. He once told a young disciple, "You don't need a crowd to feel loved. You just need one person who can sit with you in silence and not make you feel alone." True presents quiet, steady mindfulness, the foundation of authentic friendship. A real friend doesn't need to talk much, doesn't need to show up all the time. But when they do show up, your heart breathes easier. Over the years, I've listened to thousands of Buddhists from all walks of life, especially those in their 40s, 50s, and beyond. And one thing becomes clear. As we age, we want fewer connections, but deeper ones. A man in his 60s, living in the busy heart of California, once told me, "I used to have a phone book full of names, but after a serious illness, only 2 people showed up, an old friend I barely talk to anymore, and my niece who just called to ask, 'Uncle, did you eat today?'" He smiled sadly and added, "It took me 60 years to realize that one genuine presence is worth more than 100 hollow check-ins." And that's not a failure, it's an awakening. The Buddha never taught us to fill our lives with noise or numbers. He taught us to see clearly what's real, what's passing, what nurtures us, and what drains us. He once said, "Better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace." Likewise, one friend who truly listens is worth more than 100 who only talk. A real friendship doesn't shout, it whispers. It's like a soft pillow, no one notices it during the day. But come nighttime, it holds your head in quiet safety. So, if you've been feeling like you have too few friends or maybe none, at all, don't rush to judge yourself. You might just be standing at the threshold of a beautiful inner shift. Ask yourself, am I showing up as my true self in these connections? Do the people around me help me grow, or leave me feeling more drained? When the answers become clear, you'll see. Having fewer friends doesn't mean you have less to give. It means you're no longer giving yourself away to what's not real. A wise Zen master once said, "Be cautious with those who make you laugh, but don't make you deep. Because when real sorrow arrives, you won't need laughter. You'll need someone who sits beside you, silent and stays." So no, having few friends isn't a tragedy. It's an awakening. A call to return to what matters. To the quality of connection, not the quantity. And when we start cherishing silence, cherishing the space between conversations, cherishing the simple, heartfelt check-ins, we begin to see true friendship was never gone. It's been here all along, quiet, gentle, like the last rays of sun resting on a still lake at dusk. 2. Everyone who comes into your life brings a lesson. There's a question many of us have carried quietly in our hearts, sometimes with a soft ache, sometimes with burning intensity. Why did that person come into my life? And perhaps even more painfully, why did they hurt me so deeply if they never intended to stay? We cross paths with hundreds of people in life, coworkers, classmates, neighbors, ex-lovers, teachers, business partners, even strangers we meet once and never again. But strangely, not everyone leaves a mark. Not everyone stays in our memory. Not everyone changes you, at least not in the way that cracks us open and makes us grow. But then, there are those people. The ones who pass through our lives for just a few months, a few weeks, or maybe just one encounter, and yet they leave behind a giant question mark in our hearts. A quiet pause. A shift inside us. It's almost like they came here for one purpose only, to wake us up. And then they were gone. During a Dharma talk in a small temple in Seattle, a middle-aged man teared up as he spoke about his first lova relationship that lasted exactly 3 weeks. He said, "It took me nearly 30 years to realize that woman didn't come to love mesh, came to help me see the fragile, dependent part of myself. That love wasn't meant to be held on to. It was meant to awaken me. Then he smiled. And it was the kind of smile you know had taken many sleepless nights to reach. The Buddha once taught, "Nothing ever exists entirely alone. Everything is in relation to everything else. Nothing exists in isolation. Everything arises from causes and conditions. Every meeting has its roots. Every encounter has its reason. The person you meet today might have once been your family, your friend, your benefactor, even your karmic rival in a past life. Now, they return wearing a different face, in a different contexto, help complete a lesson your soul still needs to learn." There's an old Zen story. One day, a young man named Daniel climbed deep into the mountains to visit an elder monk master Lin who had lived in solitude for decades among the ancient forests. Daniel asked, "Master, why do I feel such intense connection with certain people from the first moment even when I know nothing about them?" Then he lowered his head and whispered, "And why? Do some people come only to hurt me? I just don't understand. If it's destiny, then it feels so cruel." Master Lin didn't answer right away. He simply invited Daniel to sit beneath a blooming plum tree, its white petals drifting down like spring snow. Sunlight filtered through the branches, casting soft, golden patterns across the earth like a meditative rug. He finally said, "Do you see those birds in the sky? They seem to fly randomly, but they're actually following invisible air currents. People are the same. No one enters your life without a reason. You just may not be awake enough to see it right away." Daniel looked up speechless. Master Lin continued, "Some people come like spring rain, gentle, nourishing. Others arrive like storms uprooting everything. But no one comes without meaning. Each person carries a piece of you that you have yet to discover. So if someone has ever hurt you deeply, ask yourself, what was the lesson? Maybe it was a lesson about boundaries, or a lesson about trust, or maybe it was a lesson about letting go something you never would have learned without that betrayal. And if someone once touched your heart in a beautiful, tender way, a childhood friend, a kind teacher, a fleeting love, don't grieve too much that they're no longer here. Maybe they were only meant to walk with you for a short while, like a small lantern lighting up just one dark corner of your path before quietly fading out. There was a woman in her 50s, a former doctor from Texas, who once shared during a winter retreat, "I had a best friend for 20 years who suddenly cut me off. No goodbye, no explanation. I was devastated for months." She paused, then said, "But eventually I saw it clearly. If she hadn't left, I would have never learned how to stand on my own. I would have never discovered that peace doesn't come from someone else being beside me. Peace comes from my ability to sit down and just breathe, even if it's only me." Her story struck a deep chord, because somewhere in our lives, most of us have had a 20-year friend like that. In Buddhist teachings, there's a concept called karmic seeds. These are imprints from past lives or even from this life, waiting for the right conditions to ripen. The people we meet are often the triggers for those seeds to blossom. Some come to rekindle an old promise. Some come to settle an old debt through love or through pain. And some simply show up to move us one step closer to awakening, even if they don't realize it themselves. So every person, whether they lift us up or break us down, is delivering a message from the universe to our soul. And when our soul is awake, the question changes. It's no longer, "Why did they do that to me?" It becomes, "What message did they bring me?" When we begin living with that question, every relationship becomes sacred. Of course, this doesn't mean we must accept harm unconditionally. Not everyone who enters our life is meant to stay. Some people, once they've delivered their lesson, need to leave. Letting them go is part of the teaching, and letting them go with gratitude That's the sign of spiritual maturity. So maybe, when you think of someone from the pasta love long gone, a betrayal that once broke you, or a teacher who only walked beside you for a short stretch, you'll no longer feel anger. Instead, there will be silence. And in that silence, a quiet understanding. Ah, you came to teach me something, and now I understand. And that understanding, that moment of clarity, is freedom. 3. Forgiveness isn't for them, it's for you. There's a strange but very real paradox in life. Sometimes the people who hurt us the most are the ones who live rent-free in our minds the longest, even when we wish they wouldn't. We don't remember them because we love them. We remember them because we're angry, because we're bitter, because the pain still hasn't healed. And we carry that flame inside, like it's our proof that I won't forgive them because they don't deserve it. But here's the real question. Who's getting burned in that silent war? The Buddha once said, holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. Yes, holding a grudge is like clutching a burning coal. You might want to throw it at them, but you're the one blistering first. Maybe someone really did hurt you. They betrayed you. They spoke cruel words. They walked away, leaving you with nothing but pain. But if you replay that hurt over and over in your mind each day, aren't you the one reopening the wound? Here's something many people don't want to hear, but need to. Forgiveness isn't about whether they deserve it. It's about whether you deserve peace. At a late afternoon meditation session in a monastery in Oregon, a woman in her 60s once shared, she had spent 20 years carrying an unnamed resentment. Her ex-husband had left her for someone else. She raised 2 kids alone. She said, I didn't think I hated him, but I never forgave him either. Every time life got hard, I would think if it weren't for him, my life would have been different. It wasn't that he was still around. It was that he was still in her mind, like a ghost she never invited, but who refused to leave. That's the thing about unresolved anger. It eats away at us, quietly, persistently, like rust wearing down a sharp blade. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha taught, you will not be punished for your anger. You will be punished by your anger. The anger itself becomes the punishment, and the only way out is to let go. Letting go doesn't mean surrender. It doesn't mean pretending it never happened. It means putting down that burning coal so your hand can heal, so your heart can cool. There's a famous Buddhist story. One day, in a crowded marketplace, a man walked right up to the Buddha and spit in his face. The crowd gasped. Some were shaking with rage, ready to retaliate. But the Buddha, he simply wiped his face and said, "Thank you." The man froze. The crowd went silent. Then the Buddha added, "Because of you, I had a chance to practice patience. And because of you, I now know I no longer carry anger inside me." That calm, that peace, it didn't come from weakness. It came from a strength that's been through storms and no longer needs to fight them. Forgiveness is not denying the pain. It's acknowledging the pain has done its job, and it no longer needs to be carried forward. And strangely, when that happens, the heart not only feels lighter, it also feels wider, more open, more free. You don't just forgive one person. You learn how to forgive life itself for not going the way you'd hoped. You learn how to forgive yourself for being naive, for loving the wrong person, for holding on to a righteous anger for far too long. There was a young man once who shared that he had written a 20-page letter to the father who had abandoned him as a child. The letter was never sent. His father had passed years ago. But the man said, "I wrote it to forgive him, not because he was still alive, but because if I didn't, he would keep living inside me as darkness." After he finished writing, he burned the letter in silence. And that night, for the first time in years, he slept through the night without dreams. Forgiveness is a gift. Not for them, for you. No one can force you to forgive, not even the Buddha. But he did remind us, as long as anger lives in your heart, peace cannot. And peace might be just one choice away. The choice not to carry that pain one more day. Nobody walks through life without being hurt. But the difference lies in what we do with the wound. Some carry it like a medal of suffering, to prove how unfair life has been. And some learn to lay it down. And that scar becomes a doorway to inner freedom. So if there's someone in your heart who still makes you angry, if there's a wound that still stings, if there's a memory that still catches in your throat, maybe it's time to gently ask, how much longer do I want to carry this? No one else can answer that for you. But asking that question with mindfulness might be the beginning of your healing. Forgiveness isn't easy, but it is possible. Not all at once, but it can begin today by recognizing your anger, naming it, and slowly, tenderly putting it down bit by bit, like a tired arm, finally releasing a burden it's carried for far too long. 4. Some people come into your life just to show you the road you shouldn't take. There's a kind of person who enters your life not to lift you up, not to love you, but to hurt you. They come in, leave behind wounds, scars, and then disappear. We never asked them to show up. We never wanted them to stay. And yet, strangely enough, they often leave the deepest mark, not through warm memories, but through painful lessons carved straight into our hearts, the kind you never forget. And when we look back, after all the tears and healing, we often realize some people come into our lives just to show us the road we should never walk again. At a fall retreat in a monastery in Northern California, a man in his 40s shared a story that made the entire meditation hall go still. He said he had been in love with a woman for nearly 10 years. He gave her everything, his time, his sacrifices, his absolute trust. They planned to get married. But just 1 month before the wedding, he found out she'd been secretly seeing his best friend for half a year. It wasn't just one betrayal, he said, his voice choking. It was betrayal from the two people I trusted most. Most people would call that rock bottom. But this man didn't come to the retreat out of hatred. He came to share this. If that hadn't happened, I would have married the wrong person, entered a life built on lies, and lost myself in the process. That shock woke me up. It led me to inner work, meditation, healing, and I've never been stronger than I am today. There's a concept in Buddhism called skillful karmic obstacles. It means that sometimes pain itself becomes the tool karma uses to steer us back onto the right path. A rock in the road might trip you, but that very fall might be the thing that keeps you from going down the wrong road ahead. Some people hurt us, not to destroy us, but to show us exactly where we are still fragile, where our boundaries are weak, where our trust is misplaced. A young woman once asked an old monk, "Why do I always choose the wrong person? Why does everyone I love end up using me, hurting me, betraying me?" Is it because I don't deserve love? The monk looked at her with kind eyes and said, No, child. You're not wrong for loving. You just haven't finished learning the lessons that love has to offer. Then he pointed to a brick wall in the monastery. One of the bricks had a crack, a small dent. See that broken brick? He said. It makes the wall imperfect. But because of that crack, you can see inside the structure something the smooth bricks will never reveal. The people who hurt you, they're like that cracked brick. They help you see what's inside yourself that still needs rebuilding. In life, some people come like sunlight, but some come like shattered mirrors, reflecting the parts of us we don't want to see. The messy, the broken, the uncomfortable. And sometimes, we don't grow the most from those who hold us up, but from those who make us fall apart. There was once a woman who lost her job because a coworker deliberately twisted the truth to sabotage her. For 2 years, she held on to rage. But later, she turned to meditation, not to forget, but to understand. And she realized, if that betrayal hadn't happened, she would have never had the courage to leave that toxic environment. She would have never started her own small business, one that aligns with her values and truly serves people. As she told her story, her voice trembled. I don't know whether to call that person evil or a blessing in disguise. No one clapped. No one needed to. There was just silence. A silence full of knowing. The kind of silence you only find in a Dharma hall. The Buddha once said, Your worst enemy cannot harm you as much as your own unguarded mind. It's not what the other person did that hurts the most. It's our unripe expectations, our unmet needs, and the part of our ego still hungry for validation. The people who disappoint us, sometimes they show up to say, Hey, you've wandered too far from yourself. It's time to come back home. Some people don't come to hold your hand. They come to teach you how to stand on your own. Some people keep you up at night, but because of them, you learn to love yourself more, to set clearer boundaries, to finally say no when you need to. Those people, they may not deserve your affection, but they do deserve your gratitude. Not because they were kind, but because they taught you a lesson no one else could. If someone once broke you, maybe they weren't a mistake. Maybe they were a wake-up call. Not every teacher speaks in a gentle voice. Not every lesson arrives wrapped in kindness. Some lessons are carved into your heart through heartbreak. But one day, you'll look back at it all and say, Thank you for making me fall. Because that's how I finally learned to rizzy in my own. None of us want to be betrayed. None of us want pain. But if it's already happened, then at the very least, let it become a lesson. Don't let it become a chain. Because sometimes, the path we were never meant to walk only becomes clear after we've walked it and returned heartbroken. And from that point on, we begin to walk differently, lighter, wiser, and freer. 5. Sometimes, helping to quickly steals someone's chance to grow. Have you ever seen someone struggling through a hard time and felt this strong, almost overwhelming urge in your heart? I have to help. I have to save them right now. Because you care. Because you love them. Because you can't bear to watch them fall. But are you sure that's what they actually need in that moment? I once met a father who loved his son so much that he wouldn't even let the boy walk through a shallow puddle on his own. Every time the child got close to a slippery spot, the father would instantly scoop him up, even though the boy was already 8 years old. He said, I'm afraid he'll fall. I don't want to see him get hurt. But during a mindfulness retreat for parents, the father broke down in tears. What if I'm the one holding my child back just because I can't handle seeing him scrape his knee? That question stayed with a lot of people that evening. In Buddhist teachings, compassion is never meant to stand alone. Compassion must always walk hand in hand with wisdom. Helping others is beautiful. But helping at the wrong time, in the wrong way, or from a place of panic, can sometimes do more harm than good. It's like someone seeing a fish flopping around at the water's edge and thinking it's drowning, so they rescue it by pulling it onto dry land. Good intentions, wrong environment. And so, instead of saving the fish, they kill it. A woman once shared the most painful story of her life. Her son had struggled with drug addiction for many years. Every time he was arrested, she borrowed money to bail him out. Every time he asked for cash, she gave it. Because inside her was this unnamed fear. If I don't help him, he might die. But after nearly 10 years, she had nothing left to give. She finally said no. And for the first time, her son had to stay in jail for 6 full months. When he got out, he quietly entered rehab. No more asking for money. No more blame. He simply said, "For the first time in my life, I was forced to take responsibility for myself." And that mother who had believed she was saving her son suddenly realized, all my life, I helped him too quickly, and I stole his chance to grow. Helping isn't wrong, but helping from panic, from fear of loss, from a need to feel like a good person, isn't true compassion. The Buddha called this attached compassion. It's when we're so attached to the image of someone's suffering that we stop seeing their capacity to transform. So we interfere. We take over. We carry their karma for them when they're the ones who need to learn from it. And in the end, we're exhausted. They haven't grown. And both sides end up feeling resentful. One retreatant once shared how guilty he felt for not helping his younger brother get out of debt. Every time the brother was in financial trouble, he would scramble to pull together money, borrowing from friends, stretching himself thin to rescue him. But after 7 years, nothing had changed. The debts were still there. The demands were still there. The reckless spending was still there. And the guilt slowly turned into frustration, then anger, then bitterness. One day, he stopped. He apologized not to his brother, but to himself, because he finally realized he didn't know where to draw the line between love and blind rescue. Since then, he chose to stay by his brother's side, but without carrying his burdens for him. He still cared. He still listened. He was still present, but he was no longer trying to be a superhero. And strangely, that's when his brother started to change. Because once no one was spinning the wheel of his life for him, he had no choice but to take the driver's seat. Compassion is a lotus flower, but the lotus only blooms in muddy water when its roots are grounded in wisdom. Sometimes, love means offering a shoulder to lean on, but sometimes, love is standing quietly on the sidelines and letting someone fall so they can learn how to get back up. Not because we're cruel, but because we believe in their strength to awaken, and we refuse to rob them of their right to grow. In one sutra, the Buddha told a story about a disciple who desperately wanted to help a young man buried in debt. He believed that giving him money would fix him. The Buddha sat silently for a long time, then gently replied, "There are kinds of poverty that money cannot erase. Only wisdom can. And wisdom doesn't come from help, but from falling and learning." At the time, the disciple didn't understand. But years later, when that very young man returned to the monastery of his own will, to meditate, to eat, simply to start over, he finally understood. Some lessons can't be taught. They have to be learned, willingly, through pain, through experience. In today's world, many of us have sensitive hearts. We see someone hurting, and we hurt too. We want to jump in and help, and that's a beautiful thing. But sometimes, helping too quickly is a reflex from a heart that hasn't yet settled. True kindness doesn't panic. True kindness knows how to pause, how to stay quiet when needed, and how to trust in the other person's journey. If someone around you is struggling, don't rush in and fix it all for them. Instead, ask yourself, am I helping because they need it? Or because I can't stand feeling helpless? Am I acting from love? Or from guilt, a need to repay, or a desire to be seen as good? And if the answers make you pause, maybe that's your cue to take a deep breath and step back, not to abandon them, but to see more clearly. In my years of teaching, I've seen this truth again and again. People who truly grow are the ones who were allowed to struggle, to learn, and to rise on their own. No one grows from being overprotected. No one wakes up just by walking a path full of roses. Only those who have walked through fire, but with a guiding light watching from afar, truly understand freedom and feel deep gratitude toward themselves. 6. Karmic connections are invisible currents, but they're never meaningless. Have you ever asked yourself, why, out of millions of people, did I cross paths with that person at that moment in a way that could never be repeated? And have you ever found yourself saying, if I hadn't taken that left turn, I probably never would have met the person who changed my life? Or maybe the opposite. If I hadn't opened my heart, I might have saved myself a world of pain. Some people call it luck. Others say it's fate. But in Buddhism, we call it karmic connection. There's a subtle current flowing beneath every encounter, every goodbye, every heartbreak, and every sweet momenta current our eyes often can't see. It doesn't look like a road that was laid out ahead of time. But it's not some random accident either. A meditation student once asked an old monk, "Master, I loved someone with all my heart, but they left me. So, did that love mean anything? Was it just a karmic connection that failed?" The monk smiled, took a slow sip of tea, and said, "Have you ever seen a bird flying across the sky? It looks so free, but in truth, it's being carried by invisible streams of wind." Karmic connections are like that. They're not chains that bind us, and they're not total freedom either. They're wind sometimes lifting us up, sometimes knocking us down, but always blowing through for a reason. In Buddhist teachings, karmic connections aren't about luck, and they're not about fixed destiny either. They're the meeting of countless causes and conditioned seeds planted long ago that ripen in a moment like this. Sometimes they come from a single glance. Sometimes from a promise left unfinished in another lifetime. Sometimes from a debt that still needs to be paid. And sometimes they come from a small act of goodwill shared a long, long time ago. There was a woman who came to the temple and said her husband was cold and harsh, and yet, for reasons she couldn't explain, she couldn't bring herself to leave him. Her mind told her to go, but something deeper kept pulling her back. So she asked the monk, "Am I stuck because of karma, or am I just weak?" The monk didn't answer right away. Instead, he handed her a handful of seeds and said, "If you plant them in rich soil, they'll grow. If you toss them onto stone, they'll die. You can't choose the seeds from your past, but you can take care of the soil you plant them in now." A karmic connection doesn't mean you have to stay stuck. It doesn't mean you must keep suffering. It just means life has created a satinga situation where you're invited to look inward, to learn something, to grow through a challenge, to let go of an old attachment, or to understand your own heart more deeply. Some relationships start beautifully and then fall apart. Some people we thought would stay forever walk away way too soon. But if you really look closely, you'll start to see No one enters your life without bringing a message. And no one leaves without leaving a mark, whether it's a wound or a wake-up call. I once met a man, middle-aged, unemployed, divorced, bitter, but he said something I'll never forget. I used to think I was a victim of fate, but now I realize everything happened so I could never live the same way again. It wasn't punishment, it was a beginning. That moment right there was when the current of his karma began to shift. Because your attitude is what steers the boat of karma and life. A karmic connection isn't about who comes into your world. It's about what you learn from their presence. If someone comes and causes you pain, don't be too quick to say it was bad karma. Maybe they're a mirror reflecting back to you the wounds you haven't yet healed. If someone shows up and then disappears, don't curse the universe for being unfair. Maybe they were never meant to stay. Maybe their only role was to awaken a part of you that had fallen asleep. In one Buddhist sutra, the Buddha said karma is like a flowing river and we are the ones walking through it. That river doesn't push you on purpose. It just flows. If you're steady, you cross. If you're unsteady, you get swept away. Karma and karmic connections work the same way. No one's forcing anything on you. It's just that the seeds you planted long ago are ripening now at the right time, in the right place, so you can see yourself more clearly. And the most beautiful part of the Buddha's teaching? No karmic thread is fixed. No karma is a life sentence. If today you live with mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom, then right now, in this very breath, a new karmic stream is being created, and it will carry you towards someone new, into a different life, into a version of yourself that's lighter, wiser, and more free. So don't be too quick to blame your past. Don't be too hard on yourself for loving the wrong person, or trusting the wrong place, or taking a step that led to pain. Because like that bird in the sky, no direction is meaningless. It's all wind. Whether it's a soft breeze or a heavy gust, what really matters is how well you hold your wings. Karmic connection isn't invisible. It's flowing beneath your feet, in every meeting, every glance, every silent lesson. And if you live with presence, you become the one who transforms that current bit by bit. 7. People come and go, but the garden of the heart remembers. Someone once said, every person you meet in life, whether for a moment or a lifetime, leaves a mark. And when we quietly look back, it feels so true. Life is like a garden. People enter our lives like trees and flowers. Some are like old oak trees, steady, rooted, standing beside us through every storm and sunshine. Others are like cherry blossoms, breathtaking, soft, fleeting, here for just a season. But whether short or long, they all leave something in the garden of our hearts. There was a man who once came to a meditation center. He had just gone through a divorce. He wasn't crying, but his eyes carried a heavy stillness. I don't understand why I can't be angry at my ex-wife, he said, even though she was the one who left. The monk didn't answer right away. He simply pointed toward the back of the temple, where an old plum tree stood dry and lifeless. You see that tree? Yes, master. It once bore the sweetest fruit. But one year, disease and insects got to it, and it couldn't survive. I never cut it down, because even in its death, it's still a part of this garden's memory. Then the monk added, not everyone who leaves deserves blame. Some people may leave, but still leave behind a shade in your soul. Not because they were perfect, but because, at some point, they touched something deeply true in your heart. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha taught, mind is the forerunner of all things. It leads, it creates, it shapes. If one speaks or acts with a pure heart, happiness will follow like a shadow that never leaves. Our heart remembers things in its own way. So anything that touches it, whether through love or hurt, leaves a trace. But what matters isn't whether that trace is beautiful or painful. It's what we learn from it. Maybe you had a college friend who was your sunshine, the one who believed in you when you didn't, who pulled you out of the dark places of youth. Today, you no longer speak. Not out of anger, just because life took you both in different directions. Yet somehow, whenever you remember them, your heart warms just a little. That's because they planted a beautiful seed in your heart's garden. And that seed still lives, even if the gardener is long gone. On the other hand, some people came and brought pain. They arrived like a storm wrecking things, shattering stability, stirring up every buried emotion. But maybe it was from that wreckage that you learned how to rebuild from the roots. Thanks to them, you realized how fragile you had been, how much you needed someone to lean on, how little you understood about self-love. And once you moved through the pain, you didn't just survive. You grew. They were no longer the destroyer in your memory. They became the reminder. Just like in any garden, there aren't only fragrant flowers. There are weeds, too. There are trees that bear sweet fruit, and trees that collapse in storms. But no tree is meaningless. Every one of them is part of the garden's journey to grow. After years of working with people who've lost loved ones, I've seen this clearly. The pain of losing someone doesn't just come from the separation. It often comes from the things left unsaid, the forgiveness not given, the love not expressed in time. And yet, it's from those very losses that many people begin to live more deeply. They start to treasure every relationship that remains. They begin to listen more, to slow down, to say thank you and I'm sorry more often. Sometimes, the person who leaves behind a new piece of land where gratitude begins to grow. What about you? Has anyone ever come into your life just briefly but left you with a lesson that stayed forever? Has anyone appeared for a single season but changed the course of your journey? Has anyone gone but still lingers in your memory, like the scent of flowers on a breeze? None of these are random. I once sat with an 87-year-old man. He said, "My son has never been the kind to say, 'I love you.' But 10 years ago, when his mother passed away, he held my hand so tightly, and I knew without a single word that his love was still there. I've remembered that moment all my life. It doesn't take big gestures. Just one real moment is enough to carve itself into the heart's garden. And I truly believe every person you've ever met, loved, argued with, or forgiven, they're all still there, somewhere in that quiet garden of memory. Not to trap you in nostalgia, but to remind you, every connection is a seed. The question is, what are you watering it with today? If you water it with bitterness, it grows into poison. But if you water it with gratitude, it blooms. People will come. People will go. That's just life. But the heart, your inner garden, is the one place you have full power to tend, to protect, and to transform. And in that deep, sacred place, you'll always remember who made you laugh from the soul, who made you cry so you could learn to hold yourself, and who taught you that real love isn't about holding on. It's about remembering each other in peace. 8. How we show up in others' lives is also a lesson for ourselves. In this life, each of us has been a student in some relationship. We learn how to love from the first person who made our heart flutter. We learn how to forgive from the one who hurt us. We learn how to let go from the one who walked away. But what many people don't realize is this: we're not only students, we're also someone else's teacher. One afternoon at a mountain monastery, a young woman came to see the master. Her face carried a deep heaviness of guilt. She said, "I once caused a close friend to fall into depression. It wasn't intentional. I was just too selfish, too careless back then. And now, whenever I think about it, I feel terrible." The master was quiet for a while, then gently asked, "Did you learn anything from that experience?" "Yes," she replied. "I've learned to speak more mindfully and to listen with a more open heart." He nodded. "Then even though you were once the one who caused pain, you are still learning how to become a better person." Then he added softly, "And you were also a lesson to your friend. Maybe a lesson about boundaries, or about trust, or about healing. No one in this life is only the victim or the villain. We're all learning and being learned from at the same time." In Buddhist teachings, there's a term called interdependent arising, which means nothing ever happens one-sidedly. When someone enters our life and leaves a mark, good or bad, we're also leaving something in them. Every glance, every word, every action, no matter how small, is a seed we plant in someone's mind. Some seeds sprout quickly. Others stay buried for years, only blooming when that person faces a turning point in their life. The master once met a man in his 60s who came to the monastery with one wish: to apologize to his mother, who had already passed. He shared that in his youth, whenever his mother asked about his day, he would brush her off. "Don't bother me. I'm busy. No need to worry." When she passed away suddenly from a stroke, he sat by her casket for hours. He couldn't even cry. Just a single overwhelming feeling: emptiness and regret. "If I could go back," he said, "I would say just one thing: thank you for always being there." That story wakes people up. We often believe that others are the ones impacting us. But in truth, we are shaping others too. Sometimes through silence. Sometimes through carelessness. Sometimes through a word we thought was harmless. Someone once called you stupid in elementary school, and you still remember it. A teacher once encouraged you when you were terrified, and you carried that moment for years. That's proof. We are seed planters, whether we know it or not. In the middle-length discourses, the Buddha emphasized, "A wise person is one who sees the long-term results of their present actions." Sometimes, just one sentence can make someone crumble. Other times, one kind and compassionate look can save someone standing at the edge. A monk once taught his students, "Before you say anything, ask yourself, is it necessary? Does it come from compassion? And if someone carries this with them for life, will it be a blessing or a burden?" And it's not just in what we say. How we live, how we love, how we treat those with less power, these are all lessons we're teaching every day. Sometimes, we teach someone how to let go just by stepping away quietly without causing harm. Sometimes, we teach perseverance by getting up again after every fall. Sometimes, we teach boundaries by refusing to tolerate mistreatment. We don't need to preach. We don't need a teacher's robe. Just by living with mindfulness and compassion, we're already teaching through the example of our life. And sometimes, our mistakes become the biggest lessons not just for ourselves, but for those around us. A woman once said after her divorce, "Looking back, I know I hurt him, but I also know, through that marriage, we both grew. I learned to love myself. He learned to speak up when he was hurting. We were each other's lesson even if it didn't end beautifully. The longer we live, the clearer it becomes. Life isn't just about finding the ones who teach us. It's about becoming someone who helps others live better. No need for titles. No need for spotlights. Just show up. Live with heart. And that's enough to leave a trace of goodness in someone's life. And maybe one day, you'll wonder, in the lives of those I've passed through, what was I? Was I a cool breeze or a passing storm? Did I inspire someone or hurt them? Did I lift them up or make them lose faith in love? This isn't a question to make you feel guilty. It's to remind you that every little thing you do has an impact. Like a gardener who knows, not only the flowers we plant will grow, the weeds we neglect will grow too. So let's live like mindful gardeners. Choose our seeds wisely. Tend to every word, every gesture, every thought, not to become perfect, but to become present, to live in a way that honors the connections we're part of. Because one day, when you look back at all the people who entered your life, who lifted you up, who hurt you, even those who just passed through like a quiet breeze, you'll begin to realize something simple. None of them came by accident. They were all puzzle pieces. Some made you laugh. Some made you cry. But when you put them all together, you'll see the picture of your own growth, where your heart became steadier, your mind became brighter, and the road ahead became just a little clearer. And how you showed up in other people's lives, that too became part of their awakening. Like a river that doesn't choose who arrives or who leaves. It just quietly receives, transforms, and flows on. So are we, guests in each other's lives, learning how to leave behind a little peace instead of bitterness. Because in this garden of life, we are both students and teachers. And if there's one thing worth leaving behind, let it be compassion. If today's sharing touched something in you, please subscribe to Buddhism Seeds so we can continue walking this journey together. Like, share, and leave a comment below. Who has left the deepest lesson in your life? I'll see you in the next video.